Hi, yes, so my name is Mirkin, and I'm a visual artist. I'm based in Berlin, and I work on a commemoration project for this, for Embodied Agents. And my work is focused on themes of personal identity and collective memory. And I'm coming not from any computer science background. I'm coming from fashion design and later on street art. So I use like a very wide range of media. So from classical painting to drawing to textiles, installation, which is my main medium, and also photogrammetry and 3D animation. And yeah, and I often collaborate with other creatives. It's a very important aspect of my work, actually. I work either with other artists, like here with Katarina Trudinsky on this exhibition, but also sometimes with architects and choreographers, or with like specific communities, or even by open call. So really wide variety of collaboration options. And what I really like, and I guess it's, I don't know, because I thrive in chaos, is the unpredictability of the situation. But I really am interested in all of the things that I can think about myself that these people bring into the creative process. And yeah, the different results. This is another collaboration with Noah Heine, who's also a sculptor. And technology is a very prominent theme in my work. So I create spatial installations that are analog and tangible to make abstract digital themes more human and accessible. But yeah, I've never worked with a robot before. This open call was really an amazing opportunity because, as I said, I love working with technology and I love collaboration. So this kind of like brings it all together. And I worked both with Goldsmiths and Constance, and of course the robot as the main collaborator. And yeah, the question that I was drawn by most in the EACVA open call was regarding the possible relations between the public and generative system. But what was interesting for me is not just how you can use these systems, but also how, in turn, these systems can influence the public and how they can influence collective memory and personal identity later on. Yeah, so when I started this project started from this exhibition in Citadel Spandau. It's a permanent exhibition of sculptures that were removed from the public space. And I really recommend it, it's amazing. And it really is like a crystallization of what is allowed to be amplified in public. What are we allowing to be said in public? And yeah, this culture of blending really drew my attention the most because my family has a personal relations to this figure. The lady that you see here is my great-great-grandmother, who was, sorry, I'm gonna drink because I'm also getting excited. So she was part of a revolutionary group, and they wanted to teach the farmers how to read, which was like not okay with the Bolsheviks at all. So when they gained power, they sent the entire group, as many others, during the Red Terror to prisons, which is where my great-great-grandmother died. And later on, her husband was also accused of something, actually falsely this time, and he was sent to what they called back then imprisonment without the right of correspondence, which later on was discovered as euphemism for execution. And so his daughter then was asked to either denounce him or to be exiled. And by denouncing him, she would admit, yeah. Anyway, so she decided that she would not denounce him and was exiled to Uzbekistan, which was back then part of the Soviet Union. And therefore, my grandmother and even my mother grew up in exile, like in Uzbekistan. Yeah. So coming to this, it's a very common story in the Soviet Union, right? Like it's not like a weird, odd case. It's a very common situation, happened to many, many people. And so for me, knowing this, it's really bizarre that still today, Lenin is somehow considered like, by many people, a great revolutionary leader, right? Like who was for the people and did great things. It's like a pop icon in a way. And I think, yeah, like basically public art and art had a lot to do with it. So I got to thinking about like if, public art back then was these sculptures, now that we, I think, move into the digital space and it really becomes our public sphere, how does new media art function as public art? Like what is the role of it in, creating public opinion and all that sort of thing. Yeah, this is a picture of the sculpture being removed from the public space and a gentleman expressing his emotions. So the key questions in this project were how can I actually retell this history with using new media in a more accurate way, perhaps? How can I create public art that will represent diverse perspectives? Not just grand narratives, right? Like that's what we normally see. Like in these monuments, you see like the war was hard. I don't know, but it's very empty in the end, in my perspective. And then how can propaganda be created with AI and robotic painting? And now, because as you know, physical painting has a very different impact on us than even a picture of the same painting. If it's online or a page, like it's just completely different. So that was really interested in, and if a robot can be used to create this art that is physical and has this impact of a physical painting, but is still, new media. And the methods, were as following. First of all, I decided to narrow the whole story of Lenin to women's experiences of repression. So, for instance, this book was very helpful. I collected testimonies of women, so oral history, which is really lucky for me because, this research is really being done in recent years. There's more and more of it, so I could actually collect all of these testimonies because it's quite a new thing. But if you go now, for instance, this book was published some years ago, and there's quite a few archives online, and you can really, the hard part for me in this project was actually narrowing it down because there's so much research and so many stories actually from all across Soviet Union. And then I took these testimonies and I created images from them. So the idea was to take these stories that were undocumented by photography and also very much underrepresented and kind of like unseen, mostly unheard, and creating images from them, so giving them an visual expression. And then the actual collaboration is using robotic painting to blur the line between human and digital creation. Yeah, and the idea of creating images from memories came to me from just my personal kind of like experiment that I had. I took some memories of mine that I was trying to make sense of, and I created really basic prompts, right? So like the most simple, so like a location, a year, and like a simple description of the action. And this was DALL-E 2, and I love this aesthetic. And and the results were really surprising to me because I was quite shocked that it really was how I remembered it. Or maybe, now that I've seen it again after 20 years, I suddenly, now I remember it like this. But anyway, I felt I could really relate to it. And I thought it was really interesting, like maybe there was something to this, system that really can be useful. Maybe it is this collective memory that can be used to generate other people's experiences as well, like in an art project. Yeah, so that's what I did. I created a set of images from these testimonies, but because in this case, I really wanted the abstraction to happen in the painting level, right? Like not in DALL-E 2, but the robot needs to stylize it. So the references needed to be quite realistic. So I used Stable Diffusion and created the whole series. So here we have like the original quote and then the prompt that I created from it and the situation, the image. And here you see women coming home, discovering their home was locked down and sealed. And the only reason they weren't arrested is because they were late. which, you know, apparently not always a bad thing. And then this is an image of a woman returning home to find that her house was raided and the husband arrested, and all, you know, the only one left are the nanny and kids. Yeah, and now we're coming to my collaboration with the teams. So, yeah, how do you turn these images to drawings? And of course, as you know, a robot that is made for assembly lines doesn't have a style of painting. Like, it just, you know. So I decided to try and give it my hand style. And also, I thought it would be interesting because I already had some like rules that I follow in my drawings. So first of all, I draw from a photo reference, which is ideal for this project, and it's figurative kind of, and I use what is called negative space drawing, which is when you try to ignore the semantic value of what you see and draw just the shapes. And the most important for this project is I draw in one line. So I put my hand on the paper and I try not to lift it as much as possible for the main image. And then, of course, there's like the textures in the background, which are later. And yeah, so I was really interested in, because it sounded to me like a set of rules that could be translated to algorithms. And actually it was, so. And so, yeah, the first, I started working with Michael in Constance, which is really interesting. At that point, I was really still obsessed with trying to see if this could become a factory situation, right? I was trying to find settings that would work on all the images. So the idea is that I could put on an image and it will become a painting and I don't need to touch it, because for me that was kind of like what I was afraid of, that this could be automized on such a level that I would not be necessary there at all. And I mean, yeah, Michael's system was really great in producing these surfaces, and I think we mainly tried to figure out what is the balance between total abstraction or too many detail, which is in hindsight really kind of was like the main focus of my project in general because of how my drawings look like. So they're like really on the border between nothing and some details, and it was we tried to find this balance. And then we played with different, in the simulation, with different brush strokes, widths, to try to see what's a good way of filling the background, because at this point we're still trying to do the background fillings. Here we tested some percentage of curvature and line length to create these zigzag-looking fillings. But yeah, but the end result was still quite chaotic, I would say, even though very interesting, but still like not really fitting to the project. Didn't, you know, you couldn't really tell the situation and the story. Which led me to think actually about the embodiment, right? Like this is, the whole project is, was about, for me at least, about the embodiment of the robot, of my work. And I think in this point, both me and the robot kind of failed, and to create a one-liner with ink. Because when I tried to, like the gentlemen over there are painted in with a pen, so that is a one-liner. And the animal in the back is me faking my own style with brushes, right? So it's not a one-liner, it just looks like. And because when I like lift my hand to pick up paint, when I come back, just something is lost. The one line, the Zen mode, it's all gone. The line is, it just doesn't work. And it was really interesting that the robot also couldn't do it, because we could dictate how long each brush stroke will be before the robot needs to pick up paint, but we didn't know where it would land in the painting, right? And it matters a lot, because it's like either a really thick line or a really thin line that is drying out, and you can do tiny details. So yeah, in this case, failure for both of us. But yeah, so we decided to step back and to create a black and white version, also because I felt it just more appropriate for the commemoration subject. And this is a test that I did of yeah, just my own hand drawing of one of the images just to see, so we would have some guideline of where this was going. And then I started working with Daniel, and for me, very luckily for me, he already had a procedure that he worked on for many, many years that creates one-liners, right? Like that's his whole work, and not his whole, but yeah. He created this amazing procedure, and he did some tests. And the one thing that became very apparent is there was something missing. Like, it didn't look like me. And I don't know if you noticed, but I'm quite a nervous person, and so my hands often get shaky. And this element, and I learned to embrace it in my artworks, right? I have like these weird shaky lines. And to introduce this to the procedure, we basically, yeah, I drew like kind of like blueprints of my line work, like just the essence of the line work itself, and Daniel added it to as a variable to his process. And another issue that we dealt with is that, yeah, like it was either too many, we could control the amount of details, but it became then either too detailed or not detailed enough. Because the robot just, like the AI just didn't know what, even if you tell it semantic value, okay, it's a person, but it didn't know which person. Like if there's a group of people, to me as an artist, only one of them is important, and everything else needs to be almost abstract. But that was quite impossible to reach in this project, at least. And the second problem is that, yeah, I couldn't agree with it on a good composition. I had my views on a good composition. It had other views on good composition. And I decided that mine was the opinion that counted. So, but Daniel overcame this with a great idea of introducing weight maps. So we created basically another layer, which we marked in a lighter color that told then the AI where should most of the details be located on the drawing, and everything else then we made quite abstract. So this worked amazing. Yeah. And that's an example of the procedure. So you have the AI image, and then the weight map in the middle, and then the final drawing. And these are some samples of the final drawing. I don't have the final installation here in the presentation, but I would be happy that if you see it live, actually, or later on my Instagram or website, because now it's hanging and it looks very different. Yeah, so I would like to wrap this up with some reflection on the process. You can see me here for visualization looking like my dad last year when I was working with Daniel, and the robot looking same as always. Doesn't age, looks great. Less maintenance also, surprisingly enough. Anyway, but what was interesting for me is like, yeah, is that when I, as an artist, I really love this tension, right? Like when you start, there's nothing, and then you work on it for a while, and then there's this magical moment where it's like raw enough to have this energy that I really love. And there's like the drips, the mistakes that are perfectly placed somehow magically, and it just looks like it has this raw feeling. And I feel like when this thing is surpassed and it becomes overworked, and it just not like it doesn't have this effortless quality. And there's something about human mistakes that look just different than robotic mistakes. Somehow, to me at least, personally, robotic mistakes look like mistakes. Like they look like errors. AI errors look like errors. And human errors, at least with figurative painting, they look a bit different. Yeah, so that was one thing. And of course, there's intention and randomness, which it has, again, the aesthetic value, but also, honestly, the time value. Like, I was really shocked by how many trials it took with AI to get both an interesting image and, yeah, a drawing that was close to what I would have done in probably 5 minutes. So that's also a thing. But on the other hand, there's something about the intention or responsibility and the randomness that I think the robot kind of overtook there. Because in this project, like obviously it was dealing with very, very hard subjects. And it was even difficult for me to even read this, right? I was also, again, pregnant, so it was just like hours of crying and reading. So drawing this would have required for me to play these situations in my head, right? Like to look at them from different perspectives and kind of experience them in a way, right? And so I was really happy that I didn't have to do this. So the AI and the robot did it for me, and that was great. But it really made me think also about the responsibility and the accountability that comes with making such a project. And this is maybe perhaps like a cautionary tale of, like, for me in this project, of what happens, that this is the main point of delegating works like this to AI. So this personal accountability gets lost, in my perspective. And yeah, I think I'll conclude with that. And of course, I brought here mostly the technical aspects of the robot collaboration, but feel free if you have questions about the research or the, I don't know, textiles, whatever, and this, I'd be happy to answer. Yeah, thank you.
Questions? Anyone? Very interesting talk. The images here started with these AI-generated photographs, and I wanted to know your feelings about those pictures. Do they feel authentic? Do they feel like they're somehow a stereotypical view of things? Those images, what were your feelings about those?
It's like I said, it took, first of all, quite a lot of trials to get something that looked, that I was happy with, because I used the existing data sets. And some of those produced like full-on influencers. It was really funny. I was like, woman in a gulag, and it's like this hair-blown lady. And so it took a while to find interesting images. I think I really played with like how I create the prompts. That was really important to get interesting images. But also, I think that it did contribute, in my perspective, this generalization, because I knew it was about to be drawn with a robot. So anyway, it was about to be quite abstract. And also, as an artist, you always kind of draw yourself. And I really didn't want to do that. I didn't want to paint myself in these situations, because I just, I wanted the importance of the stories of these women and their experiences. So that was for me actually a way to bring in sort of neutrality to the.
There's often a problem or observation with AI images is they have a strong of their time aesthetic already. We can recognize a Mid-Journey or a Dali image. And so you don't have a concern that in a few years' time you'll look back at them and think, oh, they look so X, Y, Z.
Yeah, but
then it sounds like that's not really going to be a problem because you processed and moved so far beyond it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not showing the images of the AI, so that's. But definitely, I agree with you. Like those are in a few years we will be very over them. Yeah. Yeah. Hi.
Thanks, that was really interesting. I just wanted to ask, actually, you said you were surprised by how many iterations it took to get to something that you were kind of happy with and, going through this process. Has this made you excited to do more of this, or sort of put off taking it as much further?
I think, no, I'm actually working with on an AR project right now, but with a completely different theme. I think for me, this project will stop just because I discovered that I cannot handle such material. So right now I'm working on botanics and like pornography and completely, well, it sounds, I'm working on the anthropomorphic language of biology. So that's the subject that I'm working with right now. And so I do use AI there. Like it gives really interesting results, but I think there also don't strive to produce a figurative image or a specific story. So I think I also just changed a bit my, expectations of it. And now I just let it do random stuff.
And drawing robots and sort of technology of physical creation?
I think I mean, it's not, I don't think about it because it's not really attainable for normal circumstances, but I don't collaborate, you know, without, with EACVA. But I think I could imagine doing more
Cool.
stuff with robots.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I actually would like to pin on that last question and to say as well that as part of the selection of the artists that we had, we took deliberately 2 artists that are very familiar working with painting machines and 2 they were not. So Anna and Greta, who is right now not with us, coming for a more, really more classical artistic practices. And one of the goals as well for the project was about the combining of people coming from more technical background, people coming from artistic background. We have a very different, a lot of time, way of thinking, of understanding processes and path, which makes, as you know, as Anna pointed out, like, oh, like something that I would fix like in a sec will take, with the conversation with the machine, could take hours, if not days or weeks. But what I found kind of interesting, Anna, in your talk, that you said about the fact that you wanted the robot to look like you. And that kind of reminds me of like the earlier discussion with Patrick that brings his own, I would say, spirit into the machine. But I think they said what it means to actually draw like you, because then you need to really understand your own handwriting. And then comes the question, why at all then use a machine if it needs to become a mirroring of yourself, for example, or, not or a conversation, or maybe an extension. So how was it for you in the end working with the machine? Of course, the machine has not only the body of the machine itself, but the people operating it. It will be then Michael and Danny, and how that conversation influenced the process of the creation of the final artwork.
I mean, I think you can see that the final result doesn't look like my artworks, right? Like it's very different, but I really wanted it to have a base because, again, like a robot doesn't have its own painting style, and then where do I start then if I don't start with my own style? Like, of course, because it was more of a conceptual project in that sense. Like I wanted to see if it, you know, I could do commemoration and if it is possible to have it in this factory setting situation. And I think it was really, my style was just a starting point. And I think also because I was a bit like, in a way afraid, and like because I don't work with robots, I wanted to see, you know, how is my job being taken by a robot? And I think that was also an interesting thing to find out, that like the very specific narrow thing that I do as a human is still like just humanly possible. And but I think for me, yeah, like of course the results were really unexpected and interesting, and that is the beauty of this project in the end for me, that it became something else. It's not my style anymore at all. It's the style of Danny and the style of the robot, and it's very different than what I would have done myself. And again, especially very different than how I would perhaps imagine these situations, right? Like that's very important to me in this case.
I'm not sure if it's a question as much as an observation, both in what you showed and what Michael showed as well. The only point at which I felt there was something that felt new and differently nuanced that was emerging from the system itself, rather than trying too hard to reach a level of verisimilitude or something that I think Michael referred to as natural. Of course, art is not natural, it's artificial. I think the search for something, setting that aside as a research task, which is obviously very valid, but there were 2 moments when, you know, the strokes are just beginning to find their way down the screen, to almost like to improvise in time. I felt those were in both what you were both showing. I felt that that was something genuinely that I hadn't seen before, and also something that we as humans cannot do, but had an aesthetic quality to it, like watching notes forming in music. There's something happening here that's different, and in itself was enough. It wasn't trying to be something else. It was in itself a field of vision emerging, and I thought that was incredibly interesting, so it might be worth looking at further. It's more process, I suppose, than output.
And I agree with you completely. I think that there's moments, especially working, working on in the beginning of the process with Michael or with Daniel, when it just made these things that, you know, completely different than I imagined. That was super interesting, but unfortunately, didn't feel like they were also describing the stories, because I had to stay true to these experiences. I had to move on from them. But I agree with you; those are really fascinating and by themselves. Yeah.
Thank you again.